Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. We've recently launched our Patreon page, which can be found at cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's an easy way for those who are interested in this show to help out by simply pledging a small amount each month in sponsorship. Now that could be as little as $5 a month, which is about £3.80, or as much as you like. You will enable us to dedicate more time creating more content to help you, including videos, more blog posts, and even more shows. So if you can, head over to cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon and get involved. In this episode, we talked to Richard Campbell about the Humanitarian Toolbox. Richard wrote his first line of code back in 1977 and still isn't over it. He's had a bunch of jobs in computing, built a few companies along the way, and these days does a little bit of consulting. Makes podcasts, you might have heard of them, .NET Rocks, RunAs Radio, and is one of the folks behind the Dev Intersection conferences, as well as being the chief cheerleader for what we're here to talk about today, the Humanitarian Toolbox. So welcome to The Cynical Developer, Richard.
Glad to be here, James. It's always fun to be on the other side of the microphone.
Yeah, and it's a little bit surreal for me, to be fair. Because things have sort of come full circle. I've listened to .NET Rocks and RunAs Radio for a long time, and I had an email read out, I think back in something like 2007, 2008, on an episode, and I was talking about working in a small company and being the programmer, right, being the DBA, being the IT support, the infrastructure guy, and all that sort of stuff. And I think now we call that DevOps.
Or no ops.
Yeah.
Right? The guy who does everything.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of emails over the years of folks who says, like, I'm the tech guy for my organization, and you guys are my connection to the world of technology, essentially. Yeah,
it definitely was like that. In the early days of my career, I was always in a lot of small companies where I was probably the only developer or the only IT guy, and just trying to keep current was hard back then.
Yeah, no kidding. Here, I found it. Show 472 with Steve Evans on IT for Developers from August of 2009. That's a long
2009.
time ago.
Yeah, and I've still got the mug and everything. It's pride of place on my side.
Nice. Well, and at the moment, we're not putting out any. We had some problems with the manufacturer and stuff. We sort of shut that down. We've been giving out copies of music to code by while we try and figure out how we're going to do mugs in the future.
Yeah, that's on my list to purchase the music to Mobi, to give that a go, because I like a bit of concentration music when I'm working.
I totally appreciate that, and we use music to code by quite often at the codeathons for HTBox, and I realize now there's certain tracks that just kick me immediately into flow now. It's like you start training your mind as soon as you hear those initial notes. Oh, it's time to work.
Yeah, it's that sort of stuff is something I stumbled across probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was in a job and kept getting very stressed out because of the atmosphere in there, and I'd go and I'd stick my headphones on. I was like, what can I listen to? Something calming? And I think I put into whatever music player I was using, calming music, and it came up with Zen music, and I started listening to that, and it was amazing. It just chills you out. You get that focus, and you can just get on with it. It's a magic science.
Well, and to Carl's credit, we did a show with Mark Seaman, I believe, and he was talking about this techniques for getting yourself back into flow, especially when you're active and so forth. And he turned that into this product that has done very well. He's quite frustrated by it because I think it's his best-selling music. And the guy makes a lot of great music, like stuff I listen to, not just because I know the guy, but because I like the music. But yeah, for better or worse, music to flow by is his best-selling track.
Yeah, it's good, and I think you've got a subscription-based app now as well, so so that's quite tempting to give that a go as well.
Trying to explore the new ways.
Yes, moving with the future, keeping up with the kids.
That's what they tell me. Yeah, we may be getting old, we just don't have to act that way.
Yeah,
I've got my immature behavior nailed.
So anyway, we're not here to talk about any of that at all. We're here to talk about the Humanitarian Toolbox, one of your many projects that are around. So we'll jump in with, what is the Humanitarian Toolbox?
I've had enough time in startups that I've gotten it down to a sentence. You got to have your pitch nailed. We build open source software for disaster relief organizations. That's the short description of HTBox.
Well, it's nice and concise, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it sort of blows my next question out of the water, because the first time I heard about it and when I looked at it, I didn't quite get what it was about. And because it has that disaster recovery in the name, I always thought it to be some sort of disaster recovery for business, and thought, well, how does open source help with that?
And why is it humanitarian?
Yeah.
Yeah. And very reasonable questions, because you're in that mind of we deal with these disasters all the time, these kinds of problems, and not really think about the natural disaster angle. We think about the technical disaster issues.
Yeah. So how are you taking open source software and helping people in these natural disaster areas?
The folks that are on the ground that run towards the fire, that run towards the earthquake, like these are odd people for starters, because every sensible person would go the other way. And I had the good fortune to spend some time with them, and they're all remarkable. But they're not technology people, not necessarily. And they care about stuff that works well in really adverse conditions. Going on to a major disaster site, a place where a typhoon has come across, 24 hours before, where there's no drinkable water and broken building materials everywhere, and no cell service, like all of those kinds of things. They need stuff that works reliably. And so it's very challenging to introduce software to that scenario, but we know that software is this extraordinary force amplifier, that their ability to take pictures on site to identify things, and to have GPS data, and to be able to send messages back when there is enough connectivity to be able to do that, so that they are, those first 24, 48 hours after a disaster, that if you're going to save lives, that's when you save them. And anything we can do to help those folks move more efficiently is incredibly valuable. And so software plays a role. And I think it's been a challenge for folks to really get their head around in any space. Everybody's got a supercomputer in their pocket now in the form of a smartphone. And we have this infinitely scalable amount of public utility compute around, that we can light up a huge amount of resource immediately for those folks on the ground, so that they can answer questions, solve problems, organize information more quickly, and make every one of those hours count.
Sure. So you're writing like mobile applications, as you say, to go on smartphones and things like that.
That's right.
Do you orchestrate the hardware? So if they need computers and things at site, or is it primarily just the software side of it?
We started out focusing only on the software, but bit by bit, it became apparent that they need IT help as well, but typically with the cloud. So Microsoft quite conveniently came up with Microsoft Philanthropies a couple of years ago, when we were in the midst of getting going on this, which for us was basically, how much Azure would you like? And so we're able to operate services on the back end for these smartphone-driven apps on site as necessary.
Right. Okay. Well, that's it's nice. With I guess Bill Gates does a lot for charities and stuff like that. I don't know if he was behind the philanthropy part of it.
He actually wasn't. He did his foundation independently of Microsoft entirely.
Right.
The Microsoft Philanthropies is a Satya Nadella initiative.
Oh, okay.
And he was the one who announced at Davos the public cloud for public good, right in the early days of him being CEO. And we got to be a poster child for that. Most charities that jumped into philanthropies were the big, mature, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, those kinds of organizations.
Sure.
And here we were, a little charity that I was able to say quite, seriously, was born of the cloud. We never wanted to own our own infrastructure. We were always in the cloud, even when people really didn't know what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's probably a very different angle to what some of these other charities that are out there helping do. Because I guess a lot of the others, they're all about providing food and shelter and clothing,
exactly
and
right.
hands-on to move rubble and things like that.
And you're entirely right, and they're good at that. And by that same token, if you're Doctors Without Borders and you are donated $1, you're going to spend it on medicine and bandages. Like, that's your business. That's what that charity is about. They don't spend it on technology. And I think it's one of the reasons that for a lot of the NGOs involved in disaster response, their technology is not very advanced. They're not those people, and it's not an easy way to show a donator that you're doing the right thing. So for us as specialists in that area, really a charity for other charities, we can take on that role. That's all we do. We primarily interface with the other NGOs, and we help them be more productive. Sure.
So what was it that sparked the charity, pushed you in that direction to do this sort of thing? Because it's not what most IT people think about when they think about writing applications and code.
No, it's a totally anomalous thing. It actually feeds back to .NET Rocks. Back in the old days, so from 2005 onward, for many years when Microsoft would ship a new version of Visual Studio, when they weren't doing it every quarter, we would go out on tour as .NET Rocks. We would literally borrow an RV covered in logos and drive it around the United States. And in the planning of the 2012 tour, and 2012 was supposed to ship in the fall, I think it was October, so this is in June, July, and I still have my original notes from the meeting where this went on. There was this conversation about including a charitable component as part of the tour. And a frustration that I had dealt with for years was how difficult it was for software developers to donate their skills to charity.
Yeah,
it's easy to do basic charity work, and I had often when running teams, I know that the quality and performance of my team comes from the level of trust they have within the team, and that building that trust at work is very difficult. That it's much easier to strengthen trust outside of the regular workday. And I'm not talking from a time perspective, but from a writing code perspective. That when you're working on the project that basically decides whether you get your promotion or your wages, that's not a great place to sort of improve your trust. So we would often I'd take the whole team, we'd go do a soup kitchen, or we'd do Habitat for Humanity and work on a house, those kinds of things, which is pleasurable. It's great for the team. It's a great team building exercise, but it was frustrating to me to see one of the best developers I've ever seen painting a fence. Yeah. Not that the fence didn't need painting, because it did. But knowing what that person was capable of with a keyboard, thinking, wouldn't it be great if he could take those skills and make a dent in the universe that way? And it also happens to be a good team building exercise as well. And it's good for our company as a whole. This is how we contribute to society. Like, there was all these pieces. I said, I am frustrated with how hard it is for a developer to donate their services to charity. Not that I hadn't seen it done. There's other people that I've seen do this, but a responsible developer knows what a level of commitment it takes to actually say, I am going to write a piece of software for you. Because that software effectively lives forever. That is a permanent commitment. You're essentially spawning a new life into the world, and it's going to need care and feeding from now on.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons responsible developers hold back on that. It's like, I can't make that level of commitment to you. You can't just code something over a weekend, hand it over, and hey, I'm done, thanks for playing. That software isn't going to survive doing that. And so the idea was essentially, I know developers have a certain amount of time they'd love to donate to charity, love to be able to write code to help people, but somebody has to take on the bigger responsibility of what's the right thing to write, how does it get used, how does it get maintained? And so the essence of Humanitarian Toolbox was owning the toolbox, that developers can contribute into the tools, and we'll help organize and specify those things, but our responsibility as the organization is to keep that software healthy for the people who need to use it.
Yeah, it's I think it's a better utilization, I think, of people's skills as well. When people come to me and they say, I want to get into open source software, I always sort of point them at go to GitHub, have a look around, maybe write something yourself, stick it up onto GitHub. And there's that many projects on there. You'll probably put your code up there and it won't make an ounce of difference. But getting involved with a project like this, you're going to change lives. You're probably going to save lives, and you're going to learn something along the way, I guess.
Absolutely, because you do get to be more experimental than you may be able to be at work.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges in the typical open source experience is either you start your own project, and whether or not somebody else gets involved in it or not is an interesting question, or you try and contribute to your typical existing project. And there's sort of a testosterone-y kind of, I have an idea that you've never thought of that people are really going to value on this project. Like, I think that's a very tough dynamic. I do think we're trying to soften open source's perception around that we're getting better at having jump-in items, easier to get in on. But from the very beginning with Humanitarian Toolbox, we were doing the project planning, working with NGOs, understanding the kind of things that they needed. And so we were creating work items based on the needs of that software for anybody to pick up. So I'm not picking which developer. We're not necessarily building it ourselves. In fact, we shy away from that. We know there's plenty of developers out there that want to work on these projects. So we're happy to share the work out. We focus on the project management and making sure the right work items are available for people who want to do the work.
Yeah. So can anybody get involved with it, or is there some sort of vetting system that you do to make sure that you're going to get the right people to write the right software? Because I guess this stuff's really critical.
Well, we're pretty good at testing, and we're pretty careful with how we push things out. And believe me, the disaster response industry, the folks who specialize in that, they're even harder than we are in terms of actually putting software in the field, making sure things work. Like, it's not a small bar to jump over. But yeah, it's open to anyone. And there's certainly, we go to great lengths to make sure that inexperienced developers have places to go and things to work on as well. We don't cover every technology. For better or worse, we do come at this from a Microsoft background. So we have tended towards ASP.NET Core, although we've done different mobile clients. We've done some experience with Xamarin. We've done some Ionic. We've done some good old-fashioned, responsive web app design and PIDA and SPA designs for different clients. So there's lots of different areas for you to dabble in. You just got to check it out on GitHub. I mean, we take pull requests without a question. We would hope before you take a chunk of our code and make a pull request that you talk to us first.
Sure.
Just if you see an item you think you can contribute to, comment on it, and I guarantee you somebody will get back to you and say, hey, I like the way you're thinking about this. Let's try it this way. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, and I guess from what we've said so far is that there's quite a vast array of different applications, mobile applications, web applications, cloud services, all that sort of thing. So there's probably something for somebody there within the projects.
There are quite a few, and I wish there were more. My limiting factor for HTBox these days is project management. So when folks ask me about, if I donate $100 to you, what do you do with it? I spend it on project management primarily, because we've learned you can't do volunteer project management over the years. It needs consistency and reliability, and so that's what we pay for. Now, it's a great force amplifier. If you think about, we're paying part-time for one project manager that can manage several projects for us, and when they do their job, it makes the hundreds of developers that contribute all more productive. So we could argue that we're paying for software through donation, but it's only the project management part. All of the development is done by volunteers. Sure.
Yeah, and I think anybody that's worked with only poor project managers always probably come at with the attitude of, what's the point in having them? But when you work with good project managers, that's when you start to see the benefits of actually having them. They manage to get all the crap out of the way and let you get on with the actual the bit that you want to do, which is writing the code.
And especially in a volunteer scenario where you only have one evening a week or one weekend a quarter that you can put into this, you can't take on that responsibility. You're not around enough. Yeah. And so the fact that we've kept it organized and gotten you work items in place for you, and you can make your contributions when you can and know they're going to be cared for and that you're working on the right thing, that's why we need project managers.
Sure. So how do you know what software is needed, or is it just a case of being really imaginative and building something that you think is going to help in a certain circumstance that's going to arise?
Our approach to these software projects is always to have a principal sponsor. So that might be the National Volunteer Organization in disasters, NVOAD, or we We've worked with the Red Cross. We've worked with the UN Office of Humanitarian Services. So they're the ones pushing requirements down to us,
right,
for their different needs. And then we're able to break that into stories and ultimately into specific use cases and ultimately the work items that get built. And we push through version to version, feature to feature over time. Actually getting software into the field is very challenging. There are very high bars to get across. There are test cases, and you can be agile writing software, but getting it deployed to federal emergency workers means going through the scenarios that they run a few times a year and actually demonstrating validity. So we've been going through that process for quite some time with different projects.
Yeah. So you say there that you work with the Red Cross. So this software that's being produced, it's used globally then?
We're trying to. Certainly the design has been intended to be completely multinational, and we've had development contributions from many different countries in the world. We've run codathons in Europe and in the UK, as well as in North America, Australia, New Zealand. I've always been adamant that we did not want this to be U.S.-centric, that for better or worse, natural disasters strike everywhere in the world. And mobile and cloud exists everywhere in the world to some degree or another. So we're able to work anywhere that we want to work. So both contributions are available everywhere, and the software is available to organizations that exist everywhere. Now, we're not an arm of the Red Cross. The Red Cross is many different volunteer organizations nominally under umbrellas. So most of the work we've done on the Already project, which is the one that the Red Cross supported, was focused primarily on the northwestern part of the United States. But we have had conversations with European arms of the Red Cross and looked at some of their projects, and they've been looking at some of ours. Software is a fairly personal thing. I think it's part of our goal as a charity supporting other charities is to make sure that our software is used by multiple organizations, that we don't want to simply be a branch that we build stuff for those people, but rather there are many, we've white labeled the software. We've built it in a way where many different organizations can use it.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably hard to push it out to these organisations because, like we said earlier, a lot of the other charities that are out there are for manpower, they're for food and clothing and things, and that's what you think of first when it comes to these sort of disasters.
Absolutely.
It's not what I need is a really good UI tester. It's not the first thing that jumps to mind.
That's not how they think about it. But on the other hand, I've had phenomenal volunteer UX people that have gone through some of the software we've built and made it dramatically better. Like, it makes more sense for that person to come to us than it does to try and come to a specific charity organization. But certain kinds of projects naturally lend themselves to sort of network effects. So the NVOAD project was specifically a check-in tool. So one of the things that's happened in disaster response charity over the past 20 years or so is that the quote-unquote market has fragmented dramatically. So once upon a time, if you had a hurricane make landfall, it was going to be the Red Cross and FEMA and maybe one or two other organizations were going to show up and help. Today, there are literally hundreds of organizations. The side effect of social media has been an ability to organize volunteers at a whole new level. And so there are many, many different groups that arrive at a site and want to contribute. They have the best intentions in the world. They have resources that they've had donated to them, and they're there to help. And so that particular project, the NVOAD project, was about helping to organize that.
Yeah.
So that the coordinator can identify all the different groups that are on site, who they are, what skills they have, what their timelines look like, and get them working in the field more quickly.
Sure.
And that is normally done with Post-it notes and whiteboards. It takes a lot of time to try and organize. You get a couple of thousand people from 100 different organizations all arriving at a disaster site. That is a serious logistical problem. And so, being able to have the smartphone feed the data directly to the coordinator about who you are and what your skills are and so forth, so that a lot of that data is pre-organized for them, and they can make up their teams. They can pull from different resources to put out scouting teams and recovery teams and so forth. It's powerful stuff, and it's allowing us to address this effect of essentially the fragmentation of volunteerism.
Sure. So what type of applications are you building? I think you mentioned there like check-in applications. Is that just checking in for the people that are attending to help, or is it for people to come along and say, I'm in the area, I was involved, but I am alive, and family members can come along and have a look to see?
We are in conversations around, most of the software we built so far has focused on the response worker, the expert.
Sure.
Even when they're volunteer, still quote unquote experts. They are specialists there to provide relief. There's certainly conversations going on around projects for that sort of I'm okay or I'm here, those kinds of bits of software. Our sort of marquee project right now, the one that most people are aware of, is Already. And Already is interesting because it's more of a preventative project than it is a on the ground during the disaster.
Right.
And we sort of struggled over, is this something we should be working on because it does have a broader appeal. But in the end, if the goal is simply to be able to mitigate the effects of natural disasters, then preparation is an important part of that. And that's how we sort of set ourselves with Already. The broader description of Already is using cloud and smartphones to organize skilled volunteers to provide services as needed, which is so generic it doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah, but, I guess it's like a register to say, yes, I can do X, Y, and Z, and if there's a problem, here are my contact details, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So, so one of the case study that we started from with the Red Cross was specifically around smoke detectors. So the Red Cross has an initiative to distribute working smoke detectors to any home that needs them. And that, most people have smoke detectors. They're inexpensive. They're not a big deal. Heck, they come with homes these days. But in many homes, typically in lower income spots, they're not working or they don't exist. And so in the traditional way that a smoke detector drive would be done, they would set up at a home improvement center somewhere in the parking lot with a big sign and say, hey, if you need a smoke detector, we'll have a professional installer put it in for you. Just sign right here. And over a number of weeks, they would gather up names and addresses, places where that need smoke detectors. And at some point, they would send out these qualified installers to put the smoke detectors in. The challenge was that with that time delay, the time it takes to gather the data and to actually have enough names organized geographically that you could send one person out to do a bunch of installs in a day and use that volunteer's time well, the install rate was relatively low, 20%.
Right.
Because people forget and they're not home. Like there's any number of reasons why the smoke detector doesn't get installed.
Yeah.
And so, this is all about using people's volunteer hours well. You've got a skilled installer here. Why are they doing this? It's important to them that they actually help people. Knocking on a door and not getting an answer, that's not a good day. And so you can imagine if you're a software person, I've just described this problem. This is super solvable with smartphones and a little bit of cloud backend.
Yeah.
That we're able to use social media to do the campaigns and collect names that way, that we have better GIS systems for organizing groups, that I can ship smoke detectors for a pro installer, and then I can, via the phone, he doesn't have to come into me to get a list, say, here's 5 places to install. And we have the feature now where when he's ready to go to that site, he can literally hit a button, and we've got a back-end service that's phoning the house to say your installer's on the way, just the way the cable company doesn't. And so in all of our trials of the product, we got up to 75, 80% install rate.
Nice.
Guys going out with 6 smoke detectors and come back with 1.
Yeah.
That's a much better day.
Yeah, there's a similar scheme in the UK, or there used to be, where you would go to the local fire station, and you could pick up a smoke detector or a carbon monoxide detector and install them yourself. But right. I don't know about them actually coming out over here and fitting them. I know my smoke detectors are connected to the mains power, which is really
better
good.
Way.
Yeah. But they have a drawback that they still have a battery, and when the battery goes flat, they start beeping. They don't seem to feed back and charge in. But I guess with all the stuff out there with IoT now, that these devices could even ping back and say, "Look, I'm reaching my expiry date. I need replacing." Yeah,
and you're right. Smoke detectors definitely wear out. They use a little bit of a radioactive material to measure smoke densities, and that thing has a half-life, and they stop working. And I don't want to get too hung up on the smoke detectors, because Already is great for we're working with an organization specifically in the southern U.S. around tornado preparedness. So same thing, skilled people who know how to help you get your house ready to deal with a tornado. they don't want to waste their time, so we can organize a drive so this person can go out and see 4 or 5 homes in a day.
Yeah.
Preparedness for all those sorts of things: flooding, earthquakes, tornadoes. Like, all these services are useful. I even talked to a food bank at one point that was doing food pickups for different grocery stores, and so we were looking at how already could be adapted, and I think we're going to be able to do this so that when the grocery store has a pickup ready, they can notify back to a service, and then the service can ping out to a volunteer that's nearby and say, "Could you pick this up for us?"
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us in the UK, I think we're quite naive to a lot of these emergencies, because we don't get tornadoes, we get flooding, we get landslides, but we don't get earthquakes or anything like that. So it's not something that is in the forefront of our minds, but we do see on the news and that over the pond there, it is a big problem. It is a big problem, and
sure.
There have been registered earthquakes over in the UK, a reasonable few lately, but to be honest, a lot of the time you look at it and think, was it an earthquake or was it just a really big truck driving past?
But the last couple of years, I've seen some pretty serious videos of flooding coming through the UK. So, you guys have your challenges, and it's interesting to think about the best way for those things to be dealt with. I mean, especially when it gets outside of the Western world, there's sort of a presumption the government will do these things.
Yeah.
And often when we're talking about volunteer organizations and stuff, like, they can be very efficient. That's one of the reasons I like that we're doing work on already. Is like, this is not a typical government disaster response. This is much more, how do communities help themselves? How can we, I'd love to find someone who wanted to do first aid classes this way, where once I find a sort of critical number of people who wanted first aid training, it makes sense for me to donate an evening to teach a bunch of folks. Like, there's ways for us to use these tools to help a community pull tighter together and be more effective in dealing with challenges that we have in our society.
And yet again, it's taking stuff from the software world that we try and enforce in these companies, and it's about being proactive and not reactive, and working together and utilizing the skills that you've got.
If you look at what's going on in the startup culture today, it's an awful lot of bringing smartphone and cloud to X technologies, X aspects of business. So one could look at us and go, we're largely looking at bringing contemporary technology, smartphone and cloud as being one of them, but obviously some of the new machine learning and AI stuff is interesting as well, to disaster response and preparedness. So, we live in a funny little bubble, us tech people, where we're exposed to all the latest stuff all of the time, and most people aren't. So the fact that we have these experiences, we know these things, and we want to experiment with it, we want to do more work with them. Maybe it's tech our company, our employer is not prepared to embrace yet, but it's certainly stuff that we can help the world with. So an awful lot of folks that worked on the Already project, it was their first chance to use .NET Core. Yeah.
It's and again, it's another one of those naive points that people fall into, and I get it from time to time. One of my best friend works with underprivileged children in one of the cities nearby, and he was telling me about how he's got a couple of lads there that want to get into programming, and how they'd seen this technology and that technology. And I sort of sat there and went, well, that's probably about 10 years ago. Maybe I should go and talk to them about something that is more relevant, more up to date sort of thing. And it's that sort of smack back into reality that just because you're aware of it doesn't mean everyone else is.
No, not at all.
And as tech people, we're probably 4 or 5 years ahead of the general public in what we understand is achievable at this time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, if you've done web development for a while, you understand the way the internet works in a way that the average mortal is not likely to ever understand, nor needs to.
Yeah.
And so the amplification effects of good technology on solving these kinds of problems, utilizing resources well, they're just not something that other people are going to stumble onto. They don't know enough to ask the question.
Yeah.
Could we, how do we do this better with technology? And you can see it right away when we present the problem to you. And typically, if you go look at an HDBotch project, there's a video. We've been pretty good about getting a video where you see these domain experts, the folks from the organizations talking about the problem space. And most of the time as soon as I describe a problem space like the already space, you right away have ideas for software. You've built software before. You know how to solve problems with software. And so it's not a hard thing for us to think about that and know we can make a difference here with this software.
Yeah, and I think the Humanitarian Toolbox, or HT, as you referred to it, it's a completely different aim, I think, for software, for what most of us are used to doing day to day. We're used to taking data from one point, doing something to it, pushing it somewhere else, and the goal of it is to make money. But these projects, your code's there to save lives,
Right.
And at the same time, it's amazing and it's scary. Because I've always said that I will write any software. Working with money is a bit of a dodgy one because of you are sort of playing with people's lives. Writing software for medical equipment is
Very
really scary.
Yeah.
And I think this falls into that sort of realm, I think, with those.
Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons you see the testing infrastructures are as complex as they are, and that the bar is so high to get over to get software into the field. It's frustrating to get our butts kicked in a FEMA field trial, but it's also relieving to know they have a process to it kicks your butt, so that when you do get accepted, you've done something. Like you've crossed a pretty tough threshold.
Yeah, and you'd rather that software failed in the testing stages rather than failed when it was trying to be used and cost lives, really.
Well, and I've certainly talked to folks on the ground who look at the smartphone cloud approach and say, "How is this going to beat my pen and paper? Because I love the battery life of paper."
Yeah,
I'm like, they are worried about the right thing.
I guess it's a bit similar to was it Russia versus the United States in developing a pen for outer space, and Russia's just went, "We'll use a pencil."
Yeah, that's those kinds of thinking, absolutely. So it's only when we can make such a measurable difference in the problem space that they're willing to embrace. You can't have an incremental improvement. It has to be dramatic. This was something that was virtually impossible to do without this tech. Now it's worth studying and utilizing tech and hardening the tech enough that we can do it properly.
Sure. Now, I'm sure we've probably inspired a few of the listeners out there and maybe scared them at the same time that, if they're not too scared, how do they go about getting involved? Do you have coding practices and standards that they can go and read? How do they get involved with writing code for you?
So if you're comfortable with GitHub, you can go to github.com/htbox. You'll see other projects there. And yes, there are coding standards. There are project leads. Have a conversation before you start typing, please. I'm not saying that your contribution won't be valued. It will be, but it's a heck of a lot easier to make sure you're focused on the right things and moving in the right direction. The primary website is humanitariantoolbox.com, and if you don't know how to spell humanitarian, then htbox.org works just as well.
Nice.
We are a registered 501c3. That's an American charity. So depending on the tax rules in your country, they may or may not be a tax deductible contribution. We do take PayPal, and we have a Patreon, so you can make contributions that way as well.
Sure. So if you haven't got the time to write any code, then you can donate some of your hard-earned cash over to the project as well and help out that way. And like we said, with the project managers,
we'll turn it into project management hours that make all the other developers more productive.
Yeah, and we're just about out of time, but this has been something completely different. I think for the cynical developer and for me, it's not an angle I've thought about before with software. So it's definitely been very interesting. I think I will go and have a look at GitHub and have a look at the projects and the code that's there. I'm not saying I'll be able to volunteer any time to the projects because of everything else I try to do. I'm trying to cut down on the amount of stuff I'm doing, not add more at the moment. But I'm sure people out there will be interested in getting out there and getting involved.
I hope so. It's been a lot of fun for us. It's interesting work. It's interesting to watch teams. So we've organized entire development teams to work on an HTBox project instead of the regular project, and the team dynamic's very different.
Yeah.
something about volunteerism that sort of takes the pressure down in some respects. And so different people react different ways. It's an interesting exercise to work on software outside of your day-to-day work if you've never done it before.
Yeah, and I've been toying with the idea of setting up a hackathon maybe next year for one of the local dev groups, and this sort of thing I think could be a very different approach. I attended Hack 24, which we did a little mini series on not that long ago, and we built applications that help the homeless. So still in that humanitarian sector, but I think that could be a good theme for a hackathon rather than just who's going to write the next Slack.
Yeah, and I've been steering away from the term hackathon because typical Silicon Valley one, there are prizes involved. It's everybody working on the same problem their own way.
Yeah.
You get multiple versions of the same app, where in this case, we tend to call it codeathons because we're all coding, but we're working on one problem together.
Right, okay.
And splitting up the work, and the only prize is, actually building a piece of software that helps people.
Sure. All right. So you come up with this is what we're going to build, and these are the parts that need building, and let's get on and build it.
Yeah, let's share it out between us. And so if you do a codeathon with us, one of our project managers will work with you, make sure that people are properly organized. We often trying ahead of the codeathon, get everybody on a call, get them prepped. You're only going to have a weekend or a day to do this. So a bit of pre-work significantly increases the productivity. My mission whenever we do a codeathon is that everybody gets at least a check-in. And my long-term goal always is to get you hooked on a project. Right, I am absolutely a drug dealer here. Right, the drug here is writing software that saves lives, and so if I can get you to contribute something to it and you like it, maybe you'll keep contributing. And we see that if you look at the GitHub reports for a given project, you'll see that lots of people have 1, 2, 3 contributions. They came to a codeathon, they made a contribution, they had a good time, and that's all they had cycles for, and that's fine. But there's also a significant number of people who then this just becomes part of their routine. On Wednesday nights, we get together and we work on a work item for HTBox. Yeah, and we get check-ins over time.
Yeah, and that's got to be a tough thing to do, especially for the likes of developers, because most of us suffer horrendously from shiny object syndrome. So keeping attention of the developer is a tough one, but it's a damn good cause.
Well, it matters if the project gets used, that the software is doing things. So when you get involved in an HTBox project, you're also going to get reports from us about what's being built and where things are going. We often have Google Hangouts to sort of go through the scrum of where the project at, what the next things going on are. So it's a culture, and it gets addicting. Yeah,
and I think we all get warm fuzzies when we get kudos and likes and shares from our GitHub projects. But absolutely. I think this is a whole new level of pat on the back for a project when you're making a difference to the world. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on and talking to us today about Humanitarian Toolbox, and hopefully you get a bit more interest from the community around this podcast as well.
I'm sure it will. Thank you so much for your time, James.
Yeah, not a problem. And thank you to everyone out there for listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and you've been listening to Richard Campbell talking about the Humanitarian Toolbox. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help The Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.